2025, March 13, Thursday, Recession fears. Trump's tariffs cloud U.S. economy, while Korea is mired in political turmoil. Recession fears escalated as U.S. President Donald Trump declined to explicitly rule out a recession for the U.S. economy this year. I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we are doing is very big, he said, responding to question about whether he was expecting a recession in the U.S. this year in a Fox News interview Sunday. And there are always periods of it takes a little time. This remark was interpreted to mean that Trump is willing to risk a recession to get his intended effect, particularly with his tariff push. U.S. stocks plunged on Monday. The Dow tumbled nearly 900 points. The tech-heavy Nasdaq fell 4%, the biggest percent drop since September 13, 2022. The U.S. is South Korea's second-largest export market. If the U.S. economy staggers, the South Korean economy will be hit hard. Tariffs are typically imposed as a percentage of the price of imported goods. It is a widely accepted theory that they are eventually passed on to consumers. Trump's tariff bomb on all U.S. trading partners will stimulate inflation, raising the risk of stagflation. U.S. consumer prices rose 3.0% in January, the most in nearly 1.5 years. The Trump administration began to levy tariffs on steel and aluminum on Wednesday, and it seeks to impose what he argues are reciprocal tariffs on a country-by-country basis from April 2nd. If the tariff war gets intense, supply chains will likely wobble and corporate investment sentiment will contract. A growth slowdown will be inevitable. To make matters worse, Trump's erratic trade policies added to overall uncertainty. The prevailing forecast for U.S. economic growth for this year is that it will fall far short of last year's 2.8%. Recently, Goldman Sachs slashed its 2025 GDP forecast for the U.S. to 1.7% from 2.4%. J.P. Morgan Chase turned their economic outlook more pessimistic and raised the probability of a U.S. recession this year from 30% to 40%. The Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta estimated that the U.S. first quarter GDP may decline by 2.4%, which would be the first quarterly contraction in the U.S. since 2022. The International Monetary Fund cautioned in its World Economic Outlook that if higher tariffs hit the sizable swath of world trade by mid-2025, it would wipe 0.8% from economic output this year globally. The problem is that if the U.S. economy is lettered, the export-driven South Korea economy will be jolted. South Korea's exports declined 4.7% in January and February from the same period last year. The Korea Institute for International Economic Policy forecasts that if there is a full-blown global tariff war, the country's exports will plummet by as much as $44.8 billion. The Bank of Korea has already curtailed its 2025 South Korean growth forecast to 1.5% from 1.9%. If the U.S. sinks into recession, its growth will likely fall closer to 0%. South Korea's economy is already in dire straits. According to Statistics Korea, the number of self-employed small business owners fell to 5.5 million in January, followed the figure of 19.98, a year after Korea was hit by the foreign exchange crisis and sought a bailout from the IMF. The number of new claims on unemployment benefits increased 25.1% on year to 117,000 in February, with consumers tightening their belts. Educational expenses for children, which are regarded as the last bastion of household spending. decreased for the first time in 4 years in January. First of all, domestic demand should be revived. A supplementary budget is urgently needed to kickstart the nation's economy. Even though it is beleaguered by difficulties at home and abroad, signs of politicians alleviating Korea's political turmoil are nowhere in sight. After suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol was impeached, the ruling and main opposition parties agreed to resolve urgent state affairs through consultations with the government. But proper three-way meetings have not been held due to the tumult over his impeachment trial, for which the ruling is still pending. They should resume consultations as soon as possible to process a supplementary budget and other pressing economic bills.